modern Britain, there are major ethnic inequalities. Somebody needs to be looking at those.
All the surveys that we've done continually show that black and minority ethnic people have what we call ethnic penalties. They're less likely to be employed, they're more likely to be employed in low-income jobs, their children are more likely to live in poverty. Opportunities aren't fair today.
Today we were reporting the results of our ethnic minority election survey. It's the biggest, the most comprehensive and authoritative study you've ever done in Britain. We suspect actually it might be the most comprehensive in the world.
One of the important things of understanding post-imperial society is political participation. And therefore any research such as this, looking at any aspect of political behaviour, let's put it in those crude terms, is significant.
People often think or tell you that they're registered to vote in normal public opinion surveys, but actually when you check it against the register, that tends not to be the case. Registration doesn't exist on its own. It's used for other purposes, so if you're not on the register, you can't vote. You might not be counted when they do boundary calculations, how many MPs there should be in your area. There has been a debate on whether or not voting should be made compulsory. It's not actually something the Electoral Commission specifically are looking at because we don't make policy recommendations on the franchise. It tends to be seen as going away from the British tradition, liberty and choice and so on, which is why I think it hasn't been adopted in the British model, but obviously has been in Australia.
Labour has always been the party of the ethnic minorities in the UK. We've always suspected this from looking at constituency level returns, but we've never really known it in the degree of detail that we can now produce. The core thing is actually how similar the calculations are that ethnic minority voters engage in when they're deciding who to vote for. They make exactly the same kind of calculations that white voters make, which I think is the most interesting thing to come out of this study.
What interests me and excites me most about the findings is the generational change. The first generation minorities are remarkably positive about British democracy, and then disillusion sets in. As people are confronted with the reality, they become a bit more cynical, more critical of what they're seeing.
One thing that really jumped out at me was the relatively low proportion of white British respondents who said that they were willing for the government to do more to respond to equal opportunities. And I think that suggests a lot of white British people think that the labour market's relatively fair. So when they're asked this question, should the government do more, they're hearing that as saying, should we move away from a baseline of fairness and give ethnic minorities special treatment?
If you're a young black Caribbean, you're going to find it very difficult to get a job. It's difficult for everybody. All young people now have got terrible time in the labour market. If you're black, it makes it doubly difficult. What these findings suggest is that your concerns as a young black Caribbean are not being adequately considered by the political classes.
You could clearly say that the way in which we treat minorities and disadvantaged groups is in some ways a marker of the kind of society we are. We say we're an equal opportunities society, look at these unemployment gaps that we've still got. If we're going to be spreading democratic values globally and saying to other countries, you know, you ought to become more democratic, you ought to open up your markets, well, what are we doing?
I don't think we should be happy about living in a society that doesn't match up to its own ideals of fairness and equality of opportunity. So there's a challenge for the white British to put into practice the ideals which we hold to be truly British ideals of equality.